We're going to talk about constructing grids inside of Civil 3D. It's a very simple, quick process. Only requires a couple of unique styles. We're going to employ the idea of an annotative alignment, which simply means that really anything linear can be an alignment in Civil 3D. So we're going to construct the alignment and then build off a couple of key alignments, offset alignments. The key alignments, perhaps we need to consider we want to have those as a shared resource via data shortcut shared out into our project, since we may need to make different versions of the grid drawing. The alignment resources that we're going to be showing off and implementing are in Instant On and JumpKit. We're going to employ the Style Import tool, and we're going to go to 00 Resources Style JumpKit folder and look at the alignments folder in there for the resource. That drawing is going to give us some grid alignment styles, which would display the grid as line work. But don't forget that we're also probably going to want an invisible style and or a no plot style and to display our grid. And we're also going to employ the idea of an alignments label set. It's going to employ some geometry point labels and some major station labels that will produce the ticks for our grid. And we're going to have the ability to choose whether we want our grid labels outside or inside, etc. And nothing can make that more clear than opening a drawing and taking a look. So here we have a grid. We simply have a shared surface here to give us something to give it a little context. And we're right away simply going to plot this layout, and we're actually plotting in model space. So we're going to employ the DWF printer and an ANSI expanded E-size sheet. We've applied the name plot styles into model space so we could print this, and that will produce our grid. We have grid labels, ticks at every 500 feet with crosses, and ticks with every 100 foot at all the incrementals. So a fairly classic, typical grid application to define a site. Easy to do in Civil 3D, nothing difficult about it. So how do we go about that process? Let's start from a drawing which simply has our surface, and before we do anything, we're going to, since these special alignments and label sets are not in our current template, we're going to bring them into our current template. So we need to go to the Manage tab, and always before we import something, Civil 3D is going to ask you to save your drawing anyway, so we'll save our current drawing, and then we're going to import from a location in Resources in the product under Styles, JumpKit, and we are looking for an alignment collection, and these are the alignment collections that ship with JumpKit. Lots and lots of them. Instant On Basic and Instant On Survey have a few considerably less. We want this 7 alignments topo grids drawing. I'm going to open that guy up, and when we use the Style Import tool, it all the time is going to check our resource drawing or the resource drawing we're doing against our settings, and we certainly don't want to change our settings in our current drawing. And we want to make discrete decisions about what we want to do with all the styles and not make any assumptions here. So we're simply going to uncheck every one of the potential boxes. So right now, if we said OK, we would do nothing to our drawing. In the alignment collection, we want the ones to be added, so we want those grid lines, which are not yet in our template, to be added. Under label styles, under label sets, we certainly want the to be added ones and bring those in. And we have a major station label that we employ, set of labels, which produce the ticks that we saw. So we're going to bring those in, and we have geometry points which label the start and end points in our label set that employ some of this specific collection of label styles, so we want all of that as well. So that's all we really need. If we want to simply add, we'd say OK and do that. But since this drawing is a grid drawing, and really we're not going to be making all the other stuff that we might make in Civil 3D, we can employ a trick inside the Import Styles tool and get rid of a lot of unnecessary stuff. And so we could say simply, hey, please check everything to be deleted. And since we're matching against that other drawing, anything that can potentially, any style that is not over there, which we're adding all the stuff from it, is going to be deleted. Alright, so you'll see we're now deleting parcel styles, table styles, all kinds of stuff, unnecessary stuff we don't want. However, we do have a couple of exceptions that we want to keep in the drawing. For a couple of alignment styles we want to keep our invisible one, and we want to keep our no plot style, and then we want to say OK. So Civil 3D is going to import the styles, check them, make sure that they're valid, there's nothing wrong with them, and then it's going to go through the process of getting rid of every style that was available out there that is not referenced in our current drawing. So this will not remove drawings or styles that are in label sets that are referenced, that are command referenced. We won't break the functionality that's built into our template. We'll simply get rid of all the stuff that we don't need. So for example, we're probably not going to be doing any proposed piping design, so as we can see on the screen, we're simply going to get rid of those alignment styles, as well as lots and lots of other styles, and thereby make our drawing simpler, cleaner, and more dedicated to the task at hand, which is building our grid. So this just takes a little bit of time, and we yanked out 1,000 of a couple of 2,500 in release 14. And now we just have a couple of features to build, and they're going to be alignment features. So we're going to create an alignment. We're going to do it with the alignment creation tools. The first one we're going to make is going to be called Grid North. And this is the major grid. And our style, we're going to make it no plot so we can actually see the line work. And we're going to mimic what we are doing in the other drawing, except for we're going to make the ticks go in instead of out. So we're going to use the northing in label set and say OK. And we bring up the alignment layout toolbar. We need to create a fixed line, a single tangent between 2 points, which is what it's going to define it as. And now we want a specific northing and easting. We can use the transparent GN command, grid northing and easting, to do this. There are a couple other ways, obviously, to get the location. Gonna pick the location as my northing is 1898,000, and my easting is 105 1000. And I do not want to pick another second location using that method. I got a faster way to do that, so I'm going to escape out of the command. So I have polar on actually, so I'm just using polar and dragging out, and I want to go about 2,500 feet, and that will be the end of my single tangent. I don't want to draw another tangent. That will define it. As soon as I defined it as a valid segment, gets labeled, gets the ticks, all good to go. So we have our grid northing all built. And now we need a main easting, south to north alignment, so to speak. Could do it the other way, but we're just going to do it south to north. And again, alignment creation tools, and this one we're going to name grid east, and this is the east grid, east main grid. And once again, we're going to make it no plot. And once again, this time we're looking for grid eastings in with ticks. And say OK. Repeat the process that we did for the west-east with the north. So we're going to create a fixed line to define our main easting grid, and we're going to use once again grid northing and easting. My grid northing can simply look over here and get fairly close watching the status bar, but I want an exact value, and so I want 1,896,800 as one end, and my easting should be 105,200, and I don't need another grid northing location since I can use the polar trick I did before. And we want to go up some 2,000 feet. Looks good to me. And we're all done defining our alignment. And now we got our alignment defined. Well, it's a good idea to save. So we have our alignments defined. Now I simply have to define offset alignments, tying these alignments. On those, we're going to go every 500 feet on either side. Looks like I need a couple to the left and probably 3 to the right for our east grid. So I'll select the alignment and run the offset alignment tool. It's going to name those nicely with grid east, which side they're on, and how far away from my main alignment they're on. I'm going to want 2 on the left, and they're going to be 500 feet apart away, and I'm going to want 3 on the right, and once again 500 feet apart. And each one of them is going to be a no plot line, and each one of them is going to be easting with the ticks on the end for the label set. And that produces all the alignments. Each one of them gets a handy dandy label, and we're all set to go. Now the next little process is the north-south grids. And once again, grab that offset alignments. Looks to me like 2 to the left, 3 to the right, maybe 4 to the right this time. And again, it's going to be grid knife, and we want 2 at 500, and on the right side, let's go 4 at 500, and each one of them is going to be no blot, and each one of those is going to be northings in with ticks. Say OK, and now we got minor adjustments. Oops, didn't need that one. Easy enough to get rid of the alignment. Simply grab it, delete it. This alignment I'd like to move to the end of my grid line here. That's really simple. Simply grab a little grip, change the offset. We're at 1500. As you can see, we really want that offset to be at 1200. So that grid line's adjusted. I have this grid line up here, and again I simply change the offset. Instead of at 1000, I'm going to make it at 800, and oops, got to be a negative, and want that to be negative 800, and I could pick a strange offset value. Since I moved those, I also want to adjust their properties. So this alignment went from 1000. I want to rename it down to 800 and make sure I remember to do that for this one, this alignment. And it was at 1500. I moved it to 1200. And we can zoom to our surface, which will make our grid. Let's run a check plot. Once again, run a plot. Want my DWF6 plotter as a test. Run it to an E-size piece of paper. Apply the layout. We'll go with the display. I could also do extents here. I could also do a window. Any one of those would define what I got. End up with my grid, end up with my ticks. Things are looking pretty good. Maybe things are a little small. So one thing I do need to check is, oops, do need to change my annotative scale. Since this is probably a big enough drawing, it's going to plot at 100. That'll change my tick size, change my label size. If I want to adjust all my labels and make all those larger all at once, that's really easy. Let's go over to settings. It's an alignment and label style, and for all the sets for the alignments, I can edit the label style defaults here, and for all the labels, they're going to default layers. For the pieces and parts, I have a text height that translates to effectively the smallest under NCS, but maybe I want them all to be slightly larger, effectively L80. I want to apply and force that upon every single style that's an alignment style, and each text component also has a drag state component, and I want to make that value to be about the same. And once again, I want to apply that to all my label styles. Say OK. Do a regen all, and my labels actually all got bigger. And once again, let's just do a check plot now that things are bigger, and now I have bigger readable labels. Everything turns out nicely. End up with my grid on the inside. If I want some of it to the outside, want some lines to show, not other lines to show. For example, I could change the alignment style on the outside of the grid and have line work appear all around the outside of my grid without any problem. Simply change my alignment style, and their alignment styles actually draw continuous lines on the right layers and produce that as part of that sample alignment set. So that's the process of making a grid. We got a couple other issues that might come up here. These lines, maybe I don't want these lines to go this far, so how do I modify where my grid lines go? I want like to shorten this line and this line. I need to detach them from my main north-south. So let's start at the bottom one. Grab that. Since it is being driven by the main alignment's geometry, I need to change its property from being an offset alignment to being just a center line all by itself. And having done that, I'm simply going to drag it over here and snap to an intersection there and shorten my grid line up. Do the same thing with the next one. Once again, I'm detaching it, making a separate alignment by doing that. And we'll zoom out, grab the grip point, snap to an intersection at the tick mark. And for these, this is our main alignment. So that was our main grid east alignment. These two we want to shorten, so I leave those attached, but I will need to detach these three alignments if I want to accomplish that. So let's detach these three alignments and make them a center line. Make that a center line alignment. And finally this one. Make that a center line alignment. And now I can modify the other three alignments by modifying the center. We'll grab that and snap to this intersection right here, move my grids up. Now I have a clean, irregular grid. Obviously, I could add another offset alignment on the northern side if I wanted, shorten it, whatever I want to do in terms of how the border works. And once again, save my drawing, keep all my changes. We'll zoom to the surface itself. So we'll have the grid definitely displayed. One more check plot, make sure things are looking pretty good. And my grids turn out well. Maybe I do want that grid line, matter of preference, whether you want lines around the outside edges or do just want the ticks. You can change the increment of the ticks in the label set. I would do that before I applied and built all the offset alignments. Typically make that decision beforehand. It's a lot easier. The other choice is simply get rid of all the offset alignments and rebuild them. They're easy and quick enough to build. Nothing difficult about building a grid out of alignments in Civil 3D. And we're going to hop back over, and there are a couple other things to consider here. Now that we have this idea of an annotative grid alignment, there are a number of things that we can do with that. As alignments, every single one of those grid alignments can do more. Each one could create a site profile or a set of site sections. We have all the snap locations for the sample lines and sample line groups. So producing sections at any of our grid lines is simply a matter of executing them. Hence, maybe we want to save some of those section grid alignments out into our project, as they may be useful for publishing pieces of our project. Do you want the grid drawing as an external reference? Most certainly. A couple of things that we probably want to do before we're done with our grid drawing is remove the reference surface so we only have the grid, get rid of all the other miscellaneous styles we are not employing, and clean the drawing up, make sure it's as thin and lean as possible and not going to cause me performance issues when I plot. The other choice that we have in Civil 3D is that instead of doing it as a drawing reference, plot it to DWF out of model space, just like I was doing here, save that DWF, and instead use that image as a reference. If you're working in a coordinate system, the DWF will retain the coordinate system. If you want, you can, in that DWF image, retain the layer properties, be able to turn things on and off, decide what you want in the image as well, which actually is sometimes better than actually having the external reference drawing that you got to carry around. The other thing to consider is the grid itself is now alignments which may become part of any site parcel. So given that all the intersections will generate areas and all that, and that parcel styles get you the option to fill the grid or fill the squares in the grid. You can do things like alternating screened and unscreened grid areas, give you lightly screened checkerboards and other fancy stuff. You can also do small or larger edge fill borders instead of real lines, so you can fill out to the edge of the ticks, for example, with a screen, which sometimes improves readability if the grid is critical to the kind of work that you have to publish. The parcel area labels also get you numbers in the grid, so if you need to build a grid location map for a larger project and that sort of thing, grids made out of alignments put into site parcels are a fast way to accomplish exactly that. And that about wraps it up for grid alignments.